And when you are young, you don't understand the concept of money. You don't understand whether you are rich, poor, middle class, or where you're based in the world, because you're a little bit like this songbird in a cage. You only know the environment around you.
Yeah.
You do not know, realistically, where you are on the ladder of economics, where you exist in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So as somebody who's going through life learning, I think everyone goes through this journey. And I remember at one point when I can't remember the exact question, but it was something on the lines of, "Grandma, are we rich?"
Welcome to the Mikey G podcast experience. What up, folks? I am so excited. Chris, welcome to the show. Did you think it was going to be that loud?
I knew it would be loud. I did not expect it to be that loud. But I'm loving it. I'm loving it, Mikey.
I always want to start off just to break the ice and get the energy in. But welcome to the show, man. I'm so excited to see you. Hey, I do have to talk about this right off the bat. This Boardy thing, man. It's it's amazing how good it's gotten, I think, in the last month. Because I was getting some pretty misaligned stuff, but in the last month to have somebody like you come through AI.
It's so amazing. And I know we're going to probably talk about it a bit more, but I think it's a fascinating way because a question that I think a lot of people are asking, and we briefly spoke before this, when you talked about AI versus human and human connection and how AI, in a way, can AI bring human connection back together? I think that's the question of where it's going. And I think Boardy is such a great example of where AI is doing that.
Yeah,
so
100%. And to tell the audience that has no clue what Boardy is a guy who has built a company. It's a virtual AI assistant, basically. And we got in early on the gig, and the pro level, you basically give it your profile and it links you up with people. So Chris and I got linked up literally through an AI agent, and now we're here. We had a beautiful intro conversation, and now we're having the podcast all because of Boardy. And to your point, it's absolutely, and I think this is the thing we'll talk about later on the podcast too, is the misconception. I wish the narrative will go away that AI is just going to destroy all things human. It is if you use it correctly, Boardy being an example, it makes you superhuman. It is a superhuman tool. So enough about that. We are going to have so many more little tangents like that.
I'm very excited. We've already gone off tangents, but I'm very excited.
That's what, and I said, natural and organic. That's the best way to have a conversation anyways. So what we like to do before we get into the Mikey G podcast experience question, we like to do a little formal introduction. So Chris has been a serial entrepreneur for 14 years. He was partner, and I was really excited when I saw he worked for this company, but partner for the second fastest growing AI company in 2024 in the US. And then now he is bootstrapping his own company to help founders find their way in this chaotic world. I'm really excited to talk about that because I actually talk about this often, sometimes in my content, but I've had conversations with founders that have come through this show. And I think the face of how you start a company is rapidly changing now too with AI, right? And so that's just an interesting topic. How did I do? Anything to add there, or did I nail it?
That was an amazing introduction. Thank you.
Fantastic. So with that being said, the world famous Mikey G podcast experience question. Chris, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me chapter 1, 2, and 3. To reiterate for the audience who has never seen this show, chapter 1 is your childhood. Prompted questions here. Parents, parental figures, mantras, be kind, work hard, pay it forward. tinker? Did you play sports? Vivid memory? Then we roll into chapter 2. Chapter 2 is your schooling, professional career. But remember, like I said before we came on, I am really interested about the insights. What were the aha moments? What was the pressure cooker that you went through to spawn out the other side? Oh, that's what that horrible time or moment actually meant, because these are the things that we need to be sharing. Chapter 3, why did you decide to start your company now? What does it look like and what does the future look like? And then we wind it down. So with that being said, it's all you, man. Chapter 1, wherever you want to go, wherever feels natural to you.
Chapter 1, where did it all begin? That is a very good question. So I'm just probably going to throw a couple of stories out there, and they may not be in order, so I will just do the ones that come to my mind. But when you said, where did it all begin? So back in around 2012 is where I got my first seed of wanting to get into entrepreneurship. And it all came about because an amazing lady who I'll talk about a little bit more, and I'm sorry if I get a little bit emotional, but it's a raw story, and I'm happy to share it with you, Mikey, because you've been very raw and shared your story. I want to make sure that I'm sharing this. So
but
my grandma,
you have to hold on to that story. I want to hear it. But I heard 2012, and I think 2012 you were getting into your stuff. I need the raw 5-year-old Chris. So
okay. Wow. Okay.
All right. I'm talking childhood. I'm talking dead serious childhood. I want to know why you are a software engineer. I want to know, did you like to read books? I want to know, did you have some mentors? Did you just play outside? What did that look like?
I'm going to tell you an embarrassing story.
Perfect.
So I must have been about 6 or 7. And I remember always being fascinated by how things worked. Locks. I loved the idea of how locks work, how people could pick and manipulate locks. And it did get me in trouble.
That's fascinating.
There was a joke because I had a fascination with picking locks. And at school, I also liked to do things like basket weaving. And there was a joke from the teachers on parents' evening where they said, lock picking, basket weaving, was your child a criminal in a past life? And I think that was quite funny. But I think I never wanted to learn how to manipulate systems like locks and things like that for a malicious reason. I think it was just I had this natural fascination of wanting to know how things worked. So like as an early memory, I've always wanted to know the things that not many people know. And I suppose with that, you're going back to with great power comes great responsibility. Because if you know how things work, you can use it for both good or for bad. And I would actually say that's a narrative that's very prominent in the world right now. In that people who know where technology is going and understand all the potential capabilities of AI, both can do amazing and great things with AI, but equally, they could do terrible things. If you think about scams, if you think about deep fakes, and you think about manipulating people, it's a terrible thing that potentially could happen from this.
Yeah.
I think you can see... Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can see knowledge is like a fuel. It can be used for both good things and bad things. And even from the childhood Chris, I always had a fascination with how this could be done for good reasons.
Yeah.
And I moving on from the 0 to 10 years, between the 10 and 20 years, I was the youngest person in my region of where I live, which at the moment is Lancashire in the United Kingdom. So for all you non-UK or European people, that's the north of England. Yes, there are places outside of London in the UK, and it's not too far from Manchester.
I'm literally in 2 weeks, I'm going on a Disney cruise around the British Isles. And Leah's Southampton, or I don't know there's a port city.
Yeah.
I think it leaves from Southampton. Where are you located? compared
Probably
to
about a
Southampton.
4 or 5 hour drive away from
4 or
that.
5 hour drive. I was gonna say, if you were on the way, we're getting a beer because
If
how
you
crazy.
are anywhere near or you're passing through a central place, let's grab a beer.
Yeah, I would.
So we'll discuss that after this. We'll discuss that after this.
Here is why I am so excited you did what you did. Do you see what we just did here? Like, we could stop the podcast now and people would literally get something from what you said. And there's two things that I actually heard you say, which is very interesting to me. One, the tinker and understanding how things work. I'm always very curious about, was it a byproduct of like, did you like to read books? Were your parents influencing you or your parental figures influencing you? Or was this an innate thing that just was part of you? And obviously this is all reflection. Talk to me a little bit about that. What pops to your mind when you think about why you were that?
Actually quite interesting because I think I had a little revelation of myself in that was a thread that I actually hadn't connected with my journey. And so going from lockpicking to software development and then that curiosity that's always followed me through, I think it always has been that innate hunger for knowledge. So one of the first things I did when I entered the corporate world was I challenged myself to read as many books as I could in a year. And then that ended up being spread over 2 years. I'm not one of these people who can pick up a book and read it all the way through. So there's quite a few books next to me. I pick up, I probably read a chapter, I'll put it down, I'll forget about it for a week and then come back and read it again. But if I'm doing a drive to and from an office and I've got the opportunity to put on an audiobook, I can burn through those audiobooks, baby. And I think I got through probably about 120 audiobooks in about a year and a half. So everything from Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, Outliers, $100 Startups, so many different books. Because one thing I actually learned, the more I listened to these audiobooks, was the amount of effort that had been put into each and every book. You pick up a book, it's the distilled knowledge of a single person. And if you think 120 different authors, that's 120 potential mentors. And each of those mentors sharing their top 10 to 20 things that made them successful. So that's potentially more than 2,000 insights of what they learned the hard way in life that you don't actually have to do yourself.
Yeah.
So I think books are so fascinating. And my fascination with books all started with one book in particular. And it was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yes.
And I remember my grandma handed this to me and said, you can do anything you put your mind to. Read this book. I read through the book. And I think that was the first book I read all the way through nonstop. And just the stories in that book. And I know that there's many debates around whether some of what's in that book is true.
Right.
However, it gave me something.
It doesn't matter.
It kind of doesn't matter because the output of the whole thing at the end of the day was it changed my philosophy of life. It made me realize that every single business started as just an idea. Every single thing. If you look at Disney, that was just a dream inside one man's head. It didn't start off as a big theme park existing. It started off with just an idea. And in 2012, I had a little crazy concept of an idea. I sat on it. 15 years or so later, well, however many years later, 2025, last year, I realized that the concept I had there was a business that I wanted to create.
Beautiful.
And that is the foaming structure of why I created the business I set up now.
Yeah. And
I feel like I'm jumping through the chapters. I'm going through 1 to 2 to 3. Look, let's bring it. Let's reel it in.
I'm going to bring you back. We're going to get there, but because you said something I like so critically important. that I need to hear you just expand on. You said a lot of beautiful things, but the thing that I heard, you actually said right in the beginning that I thought was one of the most beautiful things. Definitely want to reflect on this, which was your grandma handed you a book and she said, you can do anything you want in the world if you put your mind to it. Talk to me about that type of narrative at a young age. Was that a constant thing? Or, how did you start formulating this concept that you could do anything? And think about, again, back into like, as you're coming of age, what did that mean to you? And do you think those environments matter?
I absolutely do. And I remember going back into I was probably about 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
And when you were young, you don't understand the concept of money. You don't understand whether you are rich, poor, middle class, or where you're based in the world, because you're a little bit like this songbird in a cage. You only know the environment around you.
Yeah.
You do not know, realistically, where you are on the ladder of economics, where you exist in the world. Mm-hmm. So as somebody who's going through life learning, I think everyone goes through this journey. And I remember at one point when I can't remember the exact question, but it was something on the lines of, Grandma, are we rich?
Mm-hmm.
And the words that she said shocked me. It's like, no, you would class us as poor. And I remember thinking, how can we be poor? I'm living a good life. I have everything I need. But based on economies and the money that you have in the bank, that's how, being brought up in a council estate, having that, being part of that environment. But in my mind, I never saw it as something that actually was something that defined me as a person. And
here it is. This is the stuff of the Mikey podcast, my man.
How are you getting this out of me? But
this is just it.
I remember, and the biggest takeaway from that was, and this is quoted quite a bit, so I'm not going to claim this as a quote of my own, but I remember relating it to a quote, which was, a rich person is not the person who has the most, but a person who needs the least.
Great.
And I think that's really powerful. Because you can have somebody with millions or even billions in their bank account, but they don't have purpose. They can be rich in wealth, but poor on purpose and this, whatever else you want to relink with purpose. But you could also have somebody who has no money that is very happy with what they're doing. They're doing amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel rich in themselves.
Yes.
So and this whole thing.
It's so beautiful, man. And this is, you just keep on nailing it, dropping bomb after bomb. This is so beautiful. I think the thing that I'm interested in on the you felt rich part was, what was it about when you're looking back? Was it because you felt loved, you felt safe, you felt like, what was that? And when you interpreted it, because this is a really, really important concept.
I think it was just, I had a very small family.
Yeah.
I was brought up just by my mum and grandma.
Okay.
And so there was 3 of us.
Yeah.
Me, my mum, my grandma.
Yeah.
So ironically, we nicknamed ourselves the tripod, the power of 3.
Love it.
I think having a loving environment, it doesn't matter if you've got a family of 50 or you've got a family of 3. If you are with people who love and care about you, that is the most important thing that you need when you're being brought up and going through life. And I would say that going through like the school journey, I moved around quite a bit. So I lived in 7 different houses and went to 7 different schools before I got to high school. I didn't have people as constants in my life, so I never created deep friendships until probably college. And from college, that's when I think I came out a little bit more in my shell. We stayed in the same place. I started building some amazing friendships, which I still have today. But I think because I did move around a lot, I wasn't relying on people because I already had what I needed. I had a very loving and caring family, and um, there wasn't anything that I wanted at that while I was growing up. So it didn't need to be a lot, but I was just content with what I had.
That's it's so beautiful, man. And now you see what we have done. We've gotten some meaty chapter 1 stuff that has really set the stage. And the biggest takeaways now for me are that you are eternally curious. You love to learn. You're a tinkerer, but you also feel confident because you were safe, felt surrounded, but you had the most important message from grandma, which was you could do anything. And it's really interesting to me because this comes up often. I literally, the mantra, my mom used to sing this to my day. It just like randomly will pop in my head, but it was a narrative, a song. I don't like. Basically, it was the point of if you could put your mind to it, you can do anything that you wanted to do. And she sang a little jingle over and over and over and over again, and that was always ingrained in me. And so I think from a young age as well, I was just internally curious. Only just because of this jingle, like something simple. I didn't even know what she was doing, right? But it was fun to sing. And then as you evolve, you're like, oh, that's what that means. And then it just is, you're forever curious. These insights are so beautiful, man. This is what it's all about. People need to hear these things because they are really important.
I think it all goes back to the philosophy of whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. If you believe you can, there are other people that, needless to say, I'd probably fall in this category, the delusionals of the world who have these crazy things. And I think what is delusional is we don't listen to the people who say we can't do it. And it's and I absolutely love that your mum instilled this into your brain at an early age because it's so true.
Yeah.
If you believe that, you create that philosophy around you. Another one of my actually, this is my favorite quote of all time, is everything you are is a result of what you thought. Your mind is everything. What you think, you become. And what that simply means is the mind is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
You can set up an entire storyline in your mind. If you think you're unlucky, you'll find 10 reasons this week of why you're unlucky.
Yeah.
If you think you're lucky, you'll probably find 10 reasons why you are lucky.
Yeah. 100%.
This narrative of you can create this mindset. And I going on to that reflection, I think this mindset was instilled to me at a very young age. And I think that tenacity and working in startups, setting up your own businesses, being involved in high growth companies, it's not easy.
No.
And
it's brutal.
You have to have a level of being resilient and actually knowing that 99 no's could get you to that one yes that changes your life.
100%.
But
yeah.
if I took those 99 no's as you're a failure, you can't do it, I'd never make progress.
Yeah.
If I listen to that one person who says yes, that's the celebration. That is the big win. Out of all those 100 people, that one person said yes.
Yeah.
And that is powerful.
Yeah, it's almost the thing that you just sparked a thought on too, is which is important too, is as much as you got to be bad, good with the bad, you also need to be able to like celebrate the wins too, right? Because they are far and few between, and you gotta it's gratitude, I think, is where I'm getting at. So you got to have that mindset too, because it makes you appreciate the good times just that much more, right?
Mm.
It's beautiful. So listen, you have done a stand-up job at chapter 1. We can start. I know you had some killer stories that I cannot wait to hear. You have to repeat the 2012 story. I so rudely cut you off, but I wanted to do this because now we're fully opened up. We're already a couple drinks in our digital campfire, and we're feeling really good now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's we're getting
there. We're getting there.
And so we can use kind of more progression. One of the things I'm interested in, and we can get to like high school and start thinking of college. Take me through, I have the framework of why you think the way you think. Tell me what is really interesting to you. You said software, you ended up in software engineering, but were you creative? Did you like math? Did you like to read? We heard about the reading, but talk to me about this high school, getting into college age. What was exciting to you?
So, year 1 at high school in the UK. So this was about 11 years old. I'm not sure the exact equivalent on the US education system, but I was around 11 years old. And I actually think that the Harry Potter books quite inspired me in creativity. And I remember writing my own very short first chapter of a book. And I remember thinking, oh, this could be it. This could be the next Harry Potter. And I went down to London, to Bloomsbury, which is the publisher of Harry Potter, and I posted by hand the manuscript into the door. And I remember going in and just thinking, oh, this is a very small little building. It doesn't feel like this is where all the magic happens, but it is. And I think a few weeks later, I got, and I think I've still got this somewhere, a letter saying, thanks, but no thanks. And that was my first big rejection in the creative world. But looking back on that, I never took it as a no. I took it as a not yet.
And why was that? Why was it the not yet? Was it just because of all the stuff we talked about?
I don't know.
Beautiful. That's a valid answer. Could be I know, but what I heard you say too, which is incredible. 11-year-olds are not doing that, man, and that just comes from by far, hundreds of entrepreneurs I've talked to. The people that have the mindset that you do, it was because they felt safe and comfortable, and because they had the encouragement from some type of figure. This is why I ask these pointed questions, because I know it's going to percolate up these insights that are beautiful. And you're spot on in the sense that 11-year-olds would not do that if you did not feel the way that you did because of the environment that you were in.
I'm going to have so much reflection time after this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm already hoping that, I know in the future someday we will have a beer, but the tripod seems like that is the thing, man. Like, I hope everybody could have a tripod in their life. All right, so you're dropping off the manuscript. You got your first no.
So,
but you took it as a maybe there's a chance.
maybe it's a chance. And this is when I went on to being the youngest person in the region to hop on to a night school course before I'd even done my GCSEs in the UK, which are the standard UK educational qualifications for getting through high school. And there was a constant there. It was my grandma who took me every single Wednesday evening to night school. We'd spend 2.5 hours. I don't know what she did on the computer. She managed to pass her time and play around, learn how emails worked. But I remember I learned so much from the basics of system development, like the table stakes. What is a variable? How do you print hello world? All this. And I remember being sat there learning Visual Basic, Pascal, all this. Really, it wasn't very sexy coding language back then. It would be like you just have circles on a screen, or you'd have it wouldn't be that fascinating. However, it did teach me the basics of what you needed to create an app. And I put that on hold. I went through the GCSEs, and I remember thinking at the time, is software development something? I could see the value of it. I could see that people were getting paid lots of money to do software development. But a part of me, I felt like I had more personality than being stuck in an office sat behind a computer every single day.
Right.
And I went through college and had a big decision of what university degree was I going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I followed in my mum's footsteps and did a law degree, which was a bit of a pivot going from software development into law.
Was software development the passion?
I think I've always been passionate about building things. I think the mix of software development and writing stories kind of came hand in hand. I'd play around. So I remember watching Resident Evil, the first ever film. And there is a very iconic scene where it comes up on all the systems, weapon system activated.
Yeah.
And I remember, I was thinking, that's pretty cool. I like that. And I probably shouldn't have watched Resident Evil at that age, but we'll skip past that. And I remember programming an entire application on my computer, which could replicate how it looked, how it sounded, and it looked pretty cool. And that was just something fun. I loved it. I think the only person who ever saw that was my mum, my grandma, and me, but it was pretty fun. And I think that has always been kind of a thread. So when you said, was software development something I've always been passionate about, I think creating things has been the passion, whether it's been a story or whether it's been a piece of software or it's been a narrative. And I went through a bit of a try as much as I could as possible during this phase of going from, okay, I can do software development really well, but is it what I want to do?
All right.
And I did the law degree.
Yeah.
And I did a specialism in intellectual property. So I still am quite clued up when it comes to trademarks and copyright and all that stuff, which has helped me no end with the business side.
Yeah.
And I dabbled with quite a few little small jobs just to try things to see if I like them.
If you could take, I'm interested in the one insight from, because there's a lot of journeys are deep in one thing, but you have this theme, especially in the beginning, of dabble in a lot of things. Do you have an insight or something that you can talk about as the benefit of doing that? or anything about that experience reflecting back?
I would say it's you don't know what you don't know. You don't know if you'll like to do something until you try it out and you've experienced. So I did, and I didn't actually tell you this, but I did volunteer radio presenting for a couple of years. And I got pulled in to do a festival loop. We went out, interviewed quite a few different celebrities, and I absolutely loved the experience. I also, in the same thread, tried and dabbled in going into corporate headhunting. And I stuck with that for about 7 or 8 years as my full-time gig.
Yeah.
And I think I took the thread of being able to interview celebrities into being able to interview CEOs and board of directors and all these crazy, insane billionaires that are running VC firms, PE firms, some of the chair people, some of the people you have to call sir. So it was such a blast, and that exposed me to so many people. And I think it was kind of this invisible thread of taking experiences and using them in different ways. So the radio experience, while the radio industry in the UK is extremely difficult if you want to get a well-paid role in the BBC or somewhere, there's so much competition, but there's many opportunities to go in and do like hospital radio or community radio and actually go and have some fun. And I think, like with your podcast, it's really enjoyable being able to create these stories and create these things that can actually either entertain or genuinely help people. And I think, in a way, entertainment does help people, whether it's escaping from reality or it's giving them guidance or pushing them in a direction that could genuinely change their lives.
Dude.
So I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here. I do apologize.
You did not. That was beautiful. That was so good.
So let's take a step back and just do a quick recap. So we had the software development, we had the writing, we had the radio presenting. I did 3 years as a volunteer police officer. And that was an experience. I learned a lot. And I also set up my own startups. Some of them were quite good. Some of them were absolutely terrible. We will not speak about those. But I always had this passion.
Wait, hold on. I got to do. I have to ask the questions. Absolutely terrible. The terrible, and there's multiple. It seems like insight there. What were the 1 or 2 major reasons why you thought they failed? Was it just timing? Was it not the right people? Bad idea? What was it?
I'll give you one that is quite topical. On paper, it was absolutely fantastic. We built the app. We got the team together. We had a lot of initial signups, a lot of interest. The app was designed essentially as an Uber for hairdressers, where people could go on and they could connect with stylists, or they could get mobile hairdressers if they were traveling around. So we prototyped this. We got the initial market mapping. We got everything set up. And then in 2020, there was a little thing called the pandemic. And everyone went into lockdown, and it became illegal in the UK for people to cut people's hair.
Yeah.
Which, when you were trying to get a business that is solely reliant on people cutting people's hair, it made it pushed the timing out. The team spread out and started doing separate things. Everything kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And on theory, it was a great business model. And I've learned a lot in business. And if I was to relaunch it tomorrow, I'd know the exact strategy and the distribution model of how to get it out there. And if someone's listening and is interested in setting that up, more than happy to have a conversation and tell them how they can do it, because I still think there's a huge opportunity there. But I think timing is so critically important when you set up a business that if there is something that happens outside of your control with timing, it can be make or break. And that was my example of where timing messed everything up.
Yeah. And it's nothing that you can have a control of. You made a great comment of invisible threads. My last question about these, we'll talk about the good ones next, but the bad ones are the failed. Is there any other invisible thread as to this was the main reason back to timing, or was each individual failure its own really specific instance, or is there a generalization you can pull out from those experiences?
What I would say is a thread I've noticed in life is if something happens and you don't resolve it, it usually finds a way of coming back. And if you put something off and you ignore it, it will eventually come back to you. That's one thing I've noticed. And I think when it comes to setting up a business and the entrepreneurial side of bringing creativity and having some fun and bringing all these little pieces together into what a lot of people say is the founder experience and journey, I think in many different ways, I have found my way falling into the founder journey by tiptoeing into different places and by accident seeing opportunities. Some of them I've had some general interest in. Others I've maybe tried something and realized, no, that's not really the right thing. But I think for me, it's always been a case of I've always wanted to build something that could change the world in a positive way.
So good, man.
I don't know, and I'll be very frank, we're 10 months in with Datumra and we've pivoted, we've changed, we've got so much feedback, we've managed to be able to do some amazing things. And this knock on wood, touch wood, whatever you want to say, that the business is going to go well and it's going to lead on the way that it wants to, but you never know what's going to happen. There are things outside of your control. And I like going into this stoic philosophy of you only have control over your thoughts and your actions. And all I've got control of right now is what I think about what I'm doing, how I perceive the world, the frameworks that I create, whether I listen to your mum's jingle of you can do this, and the actions that I make. I don't have control of whether there's going to be a international thing such as the pandemic, which makes the business impossible to do what it needs to do. There's all these little outliers. But if you think about all the things you don't have in your control too much, you'd never do anything.
Right.
If you had all the what ifs, you're never going to get to where you potentially could be.
Yeah. And I would say I want to reiterate this thread that you said, which is, and I've seen this. I've actually, unfortunately, dealing with helping somebody through something like this, but there's a reason why a lot of religions say don't lie, right? Because as you what's another version of, it's another version of what you said. If you're lying, you're putting off the truth and you're not dealing with what you should. And that is such a compounding effect in business. And it can end very, very badly with lawsuits and lots of different things, right? So to your point, I really like that insight because not a lot of people say that touch on that point. So I just wanted to reiterate how important that is. But then I got the jingle, by the way. If you put your mind to it, you absolutely can do it. So buckle down, do it, do it, do it. That is it.
Love
that. But that's the reason why I bring that up is it seems like your mind always goes back to that. And again, I think it's from all of the things that we've talked about. So take us to the interesting times. That I don't know if 2012 story is an appropriate time, or get us to the 2012 story. We just talked about some great insights of like why things didn't work out. Talk to me about some of the super interesting things that happened to you.
Are we on chapter 3 or are we still in chapter 2?
We're still in 2.
Still in 2. Okay.
We're gonna wait. So give me 1 or 2 chapter 2 moments, and then we can get into chapter 3.
So, 2012. Was this the right time? Possibly. So 2012, this was when I had the radio station things going on, and my first ever startup, and it happened by accident, was a little company which I called Miles Electric Media. And the only reason I set that company up was we were working with different radio stations and we were going to different festivals. And one of the things we had to do was have an official entity that we could put all the press accreditations through.
Yeah.
So Miles Electric Media was set up, and it was a bit of a joke. And the joke was, I was fascinated with how technology could be the reason someone failed or someone succeeded. And the name Miles Electric. Oh, I hope there's no trademark things in here, but the Miles Electric came from a video game that it was the first video game I ever played.
That's so cool.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes.
Yep. And in Sonic the Hedgehog, if there are people who haven't heard of Sonic the Hedgehog, go out and play Sonic the Hedgehog because it's a fantastic game. So Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Mega Drive, and the whole thing around Sonic the Hedgehog was he had a little device called the Miles Electric. And the Miles Electric was the technology built by Miles Tails Prowler, known as Sonic and Tails. So there's Sonic Tails, Sonic Knuckles. So Tails was the technical genius who created all of the technologies that Dr. Robotnik had to fight against, and Sonic always beat him. And it wasn't the brute force of Sonic being faster, but he was using Tails' Miles Electric and technology to actually win. So this is the first time I'm ever sharing with you where this company came from.
And it's beautiful.
The idea that technology can be extremely powerful. And this was 14 years ago from a video game.
Yeah.
And I realized that there was a massive opportunity. And secretly, that is why I named the business Miles Electric Media. And I didn't know at the time that I'd go back and revisit that as something I would then turn into an actual company. But that is the origin story 14 years ago of why I wanted to create a company that used technology to help people beat the Dr. Robotniks of the world.
That's so good.
There we have it. Dude, mic drop.
Oh my gosh, man. We are going to have to do some fun cut-ups on that and using some Sonic B-roll. But this is the cool part. And, one of the things that I take away from this conversation is creativity and imagination are such a massive part of entrepreneurship as well. Because think about this story that you built from experiencing something creative from a video game. It sparked this like deep desire to try this, right? It's so cool. And people, I think one of the things, and I'm like, my son's at this perfect age of you being able to tell a story and then visualize something and help bring that to life is a really, really important skill set. Do you have anything to expand on that, on like these concepts of visualization and creativity when it comes to building?
I'm a strong believer in manifestation and visualization. I do think that it's an extremely powerful thing. So every single night I will listen to a self-hypnosis or meditation or something that kind of gets me into the zone of where I'm going.
Yeah.
And I think that's very powerful. I think just like the jingle that your mum instilled on you, you can change your mindset at any point. And
Mm,
you've got the two parts of your brain. You've got the conscious and you've got the unconscious. You've got
yeah.
the things that are going through right now.
Yeah.
And then you've got the things that are lying underneath. And
Mm,
your probing questions have started pulling some of the unconscious of Chris to
yeah.
the surface, which
Yeah.
is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I would say there is a lot of power in knowing where you want your journey to go. And
Mm,
another fantastic book is The Secret,
it's a good one. It's
which just talks
powerful.
about how manifestation and how the visualization of what you desire can take you on that journey. And the way I see life is you might start your journey through life not knowing what you want to do. You might learn, oh, you're actually quite interested in software development, or you might be quite interested in writing books, or you might be interested in whatever hobbies you have in life,
Yeah.
and you don't really know what that means.
Yeah.
And you kind of do the Christopher Columbus of setting sail. You don't really know the destination, but you learn as you go. And at some point in your life, you may get an idea of this is where I want to be. And you can set that up as a visualization
Yeah.
of where you want to go.
Yep.
And I have something that I keep on the side of my bed that is a reminder. And I've not shared this with anyone. I will share this with you privately.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to share this publicly yet.
That's totally fine.
It's a little visualization that I look at every single morning when I wake up and every
Yeah.
single night before I go to bed as a
Yeah.
reminder of where I ultimately want to get to.
So cool, man.
And it, for anyone in life, I would say set a destination, because the ship may go on many different journeys.
Many.
But if you know the destination, you always know the way that you need to go to navigate back to where you're going to. But your destination might change.
Speaking of destinations, take us through the crazy successful times. We've got that little known company called Invisible. We've got, you said a couple other things that you were doing. Let's touch on these rocket ships of a moment, because I think people need to, I worked in Silicon Valley and downtown San Francisco, so I get that concept of the hustle and bustle. But I think AI put jet fuel on that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would love to hear a little bit about that, because I think, and where I'd love to hear is from the mindset of like, not the practical of but to help kind of demyst. There's just this mystification around what's happening in the AI world. If you could somehow give us the practical insight a little bit as to like, yeah, it was still a company. It moved fast. It was in the AI world, but like your raw experience of that. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal journey, and taking excuse me,
Sorry.
taking away the core of the business, the technology, the AI, I think the reality is that things are changing exceptionally fast. And the big changing the market is as impactful as going through the industrial revolution or the electrification revolution. We are in this AI revolution right now. With any revolution, things are changing so fast and so dramatically that being in the heat of it, every single week there were new things coming out in AI. There were a lot of things that were both good and bad. There were, wow, business isn't going to be the same ever again. Hold on a minute. Does this mean that business is not going to be the same and we potentially won't have jobs? Like, where is this going to?
Yeah.
And I think the general market right now in the space of AI is people seem to be very excited about what's being built. And those people who are the early adopters are starting to see the full potential of where it's going. But there's also a lot of fear around what's this going to mean? So in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, what does this mean for me?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about all the tech layoffs that have happened over the recent years, security in any role doesn't feel as secure as it used to. Even these professional services businesses that it used to be had to have an expert and you had to have this knowledge in a particular field, AI has started pulling away the work of the typical knowledge worker. And the way that business is being run keeps changing.
Do you have any tangible examples of that happening in real time to you as you're in the thick of this stuff? Because I feel everything that you've said, we hear, right, from the narrative. I'm interested in if you have any like practical, tangible examples of like 1 week the company was like this, the next week you're like, oh my gosh, none of that exists. Or you firsthand saw people's jobs impacted or things impacted. Or any thoughts there?
There was an awful lot. There was an awful lot. And I'm trying to think of the most valuable example to give.
It doesn't have to. Any example, I think, is valuable because I don't think people talk about this. I think people talk about these general narratives, but I'm just interested in the practical things that you saw day to day that you were like, yes, this is definitely different.
Yeah, I think so. My kind of thread going from executive search into technology always put me on the forefront of who was being hired into companies. And I think a massive shift that I saw on the hiring operation side was the hiring space becoming extremely competitive.
Mm,
And it meant that for every role that was posted on the website, you'd be getting 5,000-6,000 people applying, and quite a lot were just AI putting applications through. And something that became quite scary was the number of fake applications with LinkedIn profiles that had only just been created, with CVs that were completely fake. There was no real information on them being spammed into recruitment pipelines.
yeah.
And that, from a practical standpoint right now, means that if there's anybody who's recently been laid off, and they're starting to go out there and consider what they're doing from an applicant, candidate, however you want to consider the person who's going out there and looking what is the right next thing for them, they have got quite a difficult market because there's so much noise from AI systems, and there was some recruitment fraud where people would hire people from other places to sit in for interviews with themselves and abuse a remote working role.
Interesting.
Which meant that while you still had all the checks to make sure that this was a real person, because they've started expanding and rolling out hiring in many different places, this isn't a thing just with the business I'm working in. This is across the industry. This is across the industry where people are now finding that there's a lot of noise. People aren't able to speak to the right person because there is too much noise. And it also means that companies are struggling to be able to filter through this noise.
To find the right people, right? What is my thesis right then? And like, what is your advice to them? Because my advice to myself has been just double down on what we're doing right now, because AI can't replace. In 6 months from now, something from this conversation will have sparked and been like, you know what? I need to reach out to Chris because I know so-and-so and I need to link them up, but he also can probably answer a question that I have. Is that simple?
My advice right now would be for anybody who is either taking a career break or they are in the process of exploring. While they're exploring, look into AI native leadership.
What does that mean to you?
So when AI first came out, there were people trying semantic search, ChatGPT for the first time ever. And I think a lot of people played around with it in their personal time and they realized, oh, actually, this is quite good.
Yeah.
And it started off with a bit of fear of, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
If this is quite good, does this mean that I'm going to get replaced by this AI?
Yeah.
And I think the initial feeling from people was they were scared to admit if they'd used AI to help them in their work. Because I think when they came to meetings, it was like, oh, I put this report together. Oh, it looks fantastic. How have you done that so well? Oh, well, I worked a little bit. They weren't being honest because they were scared of them saying, oh, I use ChatGPT, that they'd just say, oh, well, why are we paying you if we could just get ChatGPT to do the work?
Right.
So that, from what I've seen, has shifted. And rather than people saying that they're scared of showing their work that has been helped by AI, now gone into a time of the time in society where if you haven't used AI, it's actually frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
Why have you wasted so much time when you could have just got ChatGPT to do this for you, or using any other AI tool? Or why are you not using Claude? And the way that I see it right now is hiring and companies are going to be focused on people who have AI native leadership. And by that, I mean that regardless of what they do, they're using AI in some way to either optimize how their teams run, how they perform, whether they're using like specialist note takers to do one-to-ones. Are they using Obsidian to download their brain into a computer? I feel a little bit like Ross from Friends. Or what tools are they using to make it easier? Because the problem is, the more that AI becomes accessible and the more that it's rolled out, the more it's going to become the norm that if you don't know AI, you're going to struggle. If you have two candidates for a role One of them does everything by hand. The other is 80% more efficient because they use it by AI and they've still got time to do all the other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say this, like, you're just not going to beat Mikey. Regular Mikey is just not going to beat Mikey with AI, right? Like, that's just impossible. But to your point, on the other side is you can actually, the ironic part about this whole thing is if you don't have AI native leadership, which I agree with you on that, is like, how are you natively AI but truly understand the systems? Because you can use AI and be incredibly inefficient because you're using the systems in the wrong way, right? Or you spend a majority of your day trying to figure out how to do it, but with somebody that has already been through the paces can do something in a minute, you know? So there's the bad side of that too. But no, beautiful insight, man. Let's do this. Anything else that you want to talk about on this? You just have this like chaotic, beautiful journey with all of these amazing threads. I love how you said invisible threads. That's a great way to pull that through. Before we get to chapter 3 in your current company, anything else you want to touch on or something to segue us into chapter 3?
I would say it's not only AI native leadership. I would say everything is shifting to be AI native. And we are going through this massive change. And I think change is scary, but it's the only thing that's constant. And you're absolutely right when you say two people can use the same tool and get completely different outcomes. The way I see AI, it's this super calculator.
Yes.
If you know the calculations to put in, you're going to get the perfect answers. But if you are putting in and you don't know how the functions work, you don't know how to do it, you're going to have a lot of difficulty. I know you watched our launch video and we put together some, I would say they're pretty cool animations.
Yeah, they're great.
And I was asked, how do you do that? What tools? What software and stuff have your team been using? And I was very open, transparent, shared. I was like, oh yeah, we've been using this. This is how we've been building it. And the person who asked said, oh, I've been using that too, but I didn't get the same results.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So it does take the right training to know what you need to do. And I think there isn't enough AI training in the mainstream right now.
No.
If you're lucky enough to have been either working in tech or you've been exposed to technology, you understand it, you have a very significant unfair advantage compared to everyone else.
Significant.
And I'm seeing like 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds who are getting stuck in using Claude Code, testing all these things out. And it's phenomenal that these people in 10 years are probably going to do more in 10 years than what someone 20 years ago could do in 40 years.
Their entire life, man. Their entire career. I think 10 years is aggressive, like too long. In 5 years. And that's my last question before we get to your thing is to your company.
My thing.
Your thing. Let's see how informal we've gotten here. I'm just calling it thing. My last question is, and I know this is an impossible question to answer, but being in the thick of it, my gut tells me by the end of next year, and I think by the end of next year, I think all of this, unfortunately, to your point, there's this narrative of have and have nots out there, right? And I don't think it's going to manifest in the way people think, which is like, by the way, we already have this in this country, right? There's a huge wealth gap, right? There are people doing very well. There's a lot of people doing not great. So that have and have nots already exist. But when it comes to the AI in particular, is what I'm getting at is, I think by the end of next year, a moment in time will happen, and people that have not been paying attention to this are going to wake up and say, what just happened? The world has fundamentally changed. I think and I think I'm being gracious by the end of 2027. What are your thoughts about the future and how it unfolds?
2027, I think by the end of next year, I would say people, if people see the changes that are going to happen by the end of next year, I don't think they'd believe them.
Agreed.
And I know that because I have seen over just small periods how the AI space, in the space of 3 months, can pretty much reiterate and change 70% of the way that the entire industry is run. And if you think about that, how many months left have we got? We've got 4 months until the end of the year, 12
We're not
months,
even done
or 15 months.
2026.
We're that's potentially 5 times the industry will change before the end of next year. And that's crazy.
It's
Absolutely
crazy to
crazy.
think. I don't think it's my it's my opinion, and I love your response to this too. Is I I I think we're already at the place where AI can replace white collar work. I think people are not using the systems right, but the technology is there in my mind. Would you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. If you look at big consulting firms, they have done an awful lot in terms of how they are changing and shifting.
Yeah,
I think the larger the organization, the harder it is
for
to
sure.
create a massive shift in the business, which does mean that if you are a part of a smaller organization or you're a startup, you actually have an unfair advantage
I
that
agree.
you can pivot really fast.
Yep.
And if you are a startup that is in the first 2 or 3 years and you're listening to this, I would say take a day to do a full review on your business and ask yourself the question, if you were to start this business tomorrow,
Yeah.
what would you do differently?
Yeah.
How would you sell differently? Would you be offering something different? Because, like you said, by the end of next year, everything will change. But 18 months ago, everything's changed since the last 18 months ago.
Think about
The
18
way to
months
start
ago, man.
businesses, the way that you can even, so the way that you can put a business plan together, or the way that you can just do market research and all these things that 18 months ago would have required so much more human effort, everything's becoming more automated. The opportunities are opening up, and it is opening a bigger divide.
Huge.
You've got there's a gap between the people who are currently either AI native or close to being there. You've got the people who aren't. And then there's this gap, which as technology becomes better and things are, it's an evolution. It's a revolution. These things are changing. The way you do business, the way you live, the way that you do things on the day to day, everything will change.
I knew I already know, like, it just happened over the weekend, right? Is like my wife, she rolls her eyes because I started my whole journey in like the Web3 crypto space, and I talk AI all day, and she's like, I'm so sick of hearing all of this. But like with I didn't even say anything. I was like mental Rolodex. She was like, "Say, so I was using Chat GPT to help us plan so and so and so," and it's like it's literally become part of like a regular conversation, and that blew my mind because I was like, I didn't think that I'd have like regular family members just like using that term in their regular everyday.
Yeah.
And it is. It's like that. That's fundamentally changing and happening. Let's get into this because I think this is a perfect segue question into your business. and it's a question I think about a lot, which is, and it's probably already happening right now, but it's not mainstream. I work for a really large organization, and I do AI stuff and are thinking about systems and whatnot. And I also do AI stuff on the side. I just don't see, because we talked about, okay, individuals. If you're not using AI, you're just Mikey AI is always going to beat Mikey without AI. I think that happens with companies, and I think this happens a lot quicker than people think. I think unless you're in a regulated space that's going to slow that pace of change, right? If you're in I mean, all spaces are regular, but heavily regulated versus not heavily regulated, it's just a matter of time before the 20-person AI native company takes down the billion-dollar behemoth as well. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
And this is already happening.
Yeah.
If you look at the example of MedV, that is just one guy and his brother who, by the end of this year, is estimated to be at 1.8 billion in revenue.
Yeah.
For two people.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I absolutely see the revolution of a lot more solo founder-led organizations coming into the world. And you can see this in the VC space. You can see that there are institutional investors who are specifically investing into solo founders because they see the potential of, if you think about it, like Mikey with AI versus Mikey without AI, a solo founder on their own, they may struggle, but a solo founder with AI, that changes the world. And it's like, it's the difference between a founder being in a boat compared to a founder being in a rocket ship. And the goal is to get to the moon. I know which one. The boat, if it was Elon Musk in the boat, he would find a way. He would find a way. But I know if I was in the boat or the rocket, I could do much better in the rocket than in the boat. And I know which one I want to be in.
So how does that, so how does this, you go through the hard times of learning failure. You're on a couple rocket ships in the AI world. By the way, did you move to San Francisco, or did you always stay in London?
No.
Okay.
I, for about 7 years, have been working entirely remotely. So I have been a bit of a digital nomad, and I have spent my time between the UK and Gran Canaria. So there is a massive tech community in the Spanish Isles of Gran Canaria.
I had no clue.
And I also have traveled around to many different places. So I've been over in San Francisco, New York, Washington, DC, LA, all for different, both personal and business trips. And I think the world we're living in also is going down the lines of, for a lot of startups, why would you pay to put all your money into having a co-working space or like a dedicated office when there are lots of co-working spaces? There are a lot more remote working.
You can just pop in.
People have changed the way that they see the ability to work nowadays. I think people have become a lot more trusting in that people can work from home and still be productive. And you don't, I think it's this, I think people who were prior to this remote working situation that we got ourselves into, and I think the pandemic and COVID-19 was the biggest CTO push to get remote working into the mainstream. But it has meant that you don't need to be in San Francisco nowadays to be able to set up a startup. And
that alone changes so much. So talk to me about this brainchild that you had, and take me through the.
Okay.
I'm interested at the moment where you're like, I've have this idea. You were on some rocket ships itself, but something happened, and you were like, I'm doing it. Let's do this. Take me through that.
Okay. You want the emotional story now? Let's go for it. Okay. So my original plan was to build out, and I had no idea of the company name. It was just whatever this Sonic the Hedgehog idea was into a business at some point in the future. And I remember I put my 10-year plan together, and I looked at it and I thought, okay, this is a 2030 goal. I'm going to do this in 2030. It'll be fantastic. I'll have learned so much about business. I'll have experienced the rocket ships. I'll have seen how you take a company to a 2 billion valuation, all those pieces, and be able to use this as an unfair advantage. And I mentioned very early in chapter 1, the woman who gave me that first book, Think and Grow Rich. And unfortunately, the tripod became a 2-legged tripod. And it was a very difficult experience. I think losing somebody so close to you who has been your inspiration, who's been your rock, and the fact that there are 3 of us and we're now down to a 2, that is a massive piece of that close small family that we'd become a part of. And I think with loss and with grieving, you think a lot about life. You think a lot about, you've got these visions for the future. And I remember thinking, oh, we'll have my grandma in a this little bungalow. We'll have like this big there were these things in my mind which were, okay, that's where we're going to be. And then the dreaded happened, and I realized that they were never going to happen. That was pulled away, and it made me realize that you don't know how long you've got left. There's a little poem, and it's a bit of a silly poem, but I think it's quite funny to put into the mix just to break the tension of how serious the conversation has got. But I think this is from Purple Ronnie, which is, beware the deadly donkey falling slowly from the sky. You can choose the way you live, my friend, but not the way you die. You never know how long you've got left. You don't know the situation. You don't know what that ticking clock is. And for me, it made me realize it could be now or never. I don't know if I'm going to get to 2030, and it may be a morbid thought, but whenever I've got 2 paths in life, I always ask myself the question, which path would I regret not doing the most? And I ask myself the question, if I didn't make it to 2030, would I regret not setting up this business? Or would I regret not doing it now and potentially not having enough experience to actually get it off the ground? And I could not honestly say that if I didn't do it then, I would not regret not doing it. And I remember I put together a LinkedIn post called The Goldilocks Time, where I said, I'm probably at the right age right now where I am old enough to have enough experience to build something, but I am still young enough to be able to work these 16, 18-hour days sometimes. Those are real things. People say, oh, you work at startup. Like, it is really real. And I think that is a bit of an emotional pull. And one thing that I did before my grandma passed away was I helped her self-publish a book.
It's amazing.
And it was a lot of work, but we got it out, we got it published, and
that's awesome.
I realized that that was a life dream, and we managed to get it done.
That's so cool.
And I wanted to put something where I could say I have at least tried a life dream of running my own business, and being one of these ones. I don't like you don't know what you're going to do. You don't know the sky's the limit. But I think when you want to create the next unicorn or decacorn or hectacorn, any of the corns, and if you don't try, you never know. And if you aim for the moon and you miss, at least you land among the stars. And that was the whole thing that pushed me into making the decision between, do I want to be in a safe, comfortable corporate or startup role where I am a part of a team, getting paid part of the team, I've got the equity, or do I want to be the person in the rocket ship, being the driver who's got the responsibility of everyone else on the rocket ship?
Yeah.
And that's where we ended up. And we're 10 months in. We have had such an insane journey of pivots. We've learned the things we are. We've learned the things we're not. We're still learning. I think the more we speak with people, the more we realize where our opportunities are and our opportunities aren't. There's been moments where we've had the sunk cost fallacy of, hold on a minute, do we actually need to change what we're doing? And that's painful, because you put all your eggs into a basket and then realize you need to move your eggs. You kind of think, oh, hold on a minute, have I just wasted all that time? But in fact, no, you've not. You've learned and you're iterating. And I think there was a quote that, unless you've launched your business 3 times, you've not tried enough to actually make it a success.
Interesting. I like that. Why 3? Is it just the repeat? Is there a reason for 3 years? It seems like 3 strikes you're out type of thing. It's been around for a while.
Well, I think when you start a business, you don't know where the potential is in your business. And I'm part of an angel investment network in the local area. And I went for lunch with one of the guys who runs it, and he had a very interesting insight. He asked the investors on their panel, how many times have you invested at the seed stage and the A round or their secondary round? How many times has it been exactly the same pitch deck or the exact same pitch? And the answer was never.
Yeah.
The business, when it's been at the seed round, they pitched what their business was going to do. By the time it gets to the next round, they've pivoted and changed it. And that was in 100% of all the investors that they asked, that had changed. So when you think about that, 3 times is probably quite conservative to the number of times you can relaunch and go out there.
That insight alone, though, is not said enough. Because that is a common theme, right? Because you have these beautiful ideas, but you just know nothing about who your true customer is, product market fit, all of these different things. Because data is, and this is the one of the nuances that AI will get really even good at, but there's still the test and learn part and the human part. And that those are these gray areas that you just got to figure out through trial tribulations, right?
Yeah.
So now that you've done a year and have done the pivot, give me your 2-minute or less current elevator pitch on what you're trying to do and what the company is.
So the most recent elevator pitch, which I did at the launch event, 3.5 weeks ago now, was that Datumra is the minimum awesome system for your business. Minimum, as in there's no feature bloat, there's nothing that is there that you don't need. But it's essentially, if you look at Pareto's law, 80% of what you need, 20% of what is custom for you. And our goal building the Datumra OS was what are the 80% overlaps between every business out there, regardless of whether you're a product business, a tech business, a fitness coaching business, regardless of what your business is and what it does, what's the 80% overlap that exists? And what's the minimum we would need to do to fix that overlap? So we've got the initial founding cohort that are testing every single day. They're building their businesses on the platform, and we're already finding things that we will probably sunset, things that we will add in. The big, yeah. It goes back to this. You've got to be in business to be able to understand business. If you don't have customers, you don't have people giving you feedback, you don't know what you don't know. That's a common thread of what we've been talking about today. You don't know what you
100%.
don't know. And 100%. You've got a very excited dog behind you.
Sorry, he's getting excited. He's getting excited about something outside. Yeah, so you don't know what you don't know because and tell me, I would love a surprising pivot that you've taken in this year journey. I would love an insight of like, you were like dead set, this is absolutely going to be killer, this is going to crush, and then
we've actually,
it ends up not.
Hot off the press, we've already found that there is a very significant opportunity within the subset of our current customer base that we didn't expect to exist, but we're now creating an entire offering specifically around that. And we actually took that away, ran it through some roundtables, and realized, hold on, there's a massive opportunity here, and it could be 10 times bigger than what we had actually envisioned in the operating system itself. And I can't say too much because it's going through a lot of intellectual property and things at the moment, but we'll be getting that into the world probably late September, early October. And the surprising thing there was, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, could that be a direction of the company? I would have probably said, hell no. Right. But now I've realized, hold on a minute, this is a massive opportunity. And I think that's the same with any pivot. Yeah. You never know where you're going to go. Yeah. And for any startups out there that are in the early stages, it always goes back to what HP and the garage and like the early philosophy was, that you're more likely to fail due to indigestion of opportunity than scarcity of opportunity. When I started the business, we had a broad concept of how do we create something that is the minimum awesome system for your business? And that thread changed. It started as a bit of a pitch of 90% of founders failing. How do we fix that? In the first 5 years, if you can get past your first 5 years, you then flip those odds on their head and you're 10% likely to fail over the next 5 to 10 years. So these stats alone were the kind of the philosophy of how do we actually do it? Is it going to be mainly the platform? We did hundreds of founder conversations or interviews, as you like to call them in the technical term, and found that the big blockers were either technology accessibility, knowledge accessibility, or network accessibility. So if you didn't understand technology, you were more likely to be in the 90% that failed in the first 5 years. Similarly, if you don't understand enough about business, you don't know how frameworks work, you don't know how to use like niche entries to your market, you put too much into what you think your business needs rather than what's tried and tested. And there is so much knowledge out there, but there's also a lot of knowledge that's hidden behind gatekeepers. AI has been trained on all the information that lives in public repositories, the internet, but there is all the information that doesn't get shared publicly, that all the big FTSE 500 have as their hidden proprietary knowledge of their processes, that AI has not been trained on.
Yeah.
Which means if you want the knowledge for business that has never been in the public domain, you're never going to get that information from AI. You're only ever going to get it from the people that have gone past the gatekeepers. Going on to that third point, network. Now, networking is so important. And there's a fantastic book, Shane Snow, Smart Cuts. And one of the smart cuts is being a super connector. And I think that's so powerful. The more people you are connected with, the more powerful you become. And in this world where there are solo founders and very small teams of people doing amazing things, having the right connections and partnerships and people around you, you never know what opportunities they could open up. I think that is the power. So those three things have kind of built the three pillars of everything we think about at Datumra. How do we make technology more accessible? How do we distill expert insights into founder ecosystems? And how do we connect the right people in the right meaningful way? And it's very interesting.
Yeah.
We started the conversation about Boardy. Boardy has made so many valuable connections. It connected us. I think there's so much that's happening in the world right now that just is going to level the playing field on entrepreneurship and being a startup and a founder. And I think it's become our personal mission to make entrepreneurship more accessible to everybody. So the business may be completely different in 18 months. I don't doubt that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But
the world will be.
What we'll be doing is still that core mission of how we make technology and knowledge and the right connections more accessible to more people. And you asked about
specifically entrepreneurs, though.
No. We've started with just entrepreneurs, but the big vision is how can we do this for everybody?
That's it. And I like the concept, the core of the concept I truly believe in. With what you've learned over the last year, I think being an entrepreneur will be one of the few things left as well with AI. Do you agree, disagree? Thoughts on that statement?
I don't think entrepreneurship's going anywhere, and like my dream is that it becomes a lot more accessible for people.
Yeah.
And I've noticed something quite deep in terms of purpose, and that is linked with going back to the layoffs that happen.
Yeah.
When people are laid off from their business, instantly, a lot of people associate what they do with their purpose. If you meet someone at a party, oh, what do you do? It's this question, what do you do? I personally hate the question.
I hate it too.
Because I think that you can't define somebody by what they have chosen in their career.
Yeah.
And there is this misconception that because someone answers in a certain way or they're involved with a certain type of industry, they put these stereotypes into place. So, oh, you work in tech. Oh, right, okay. Or there's a funny one. So I knew somebody who was a funeral director, and whenever he met somebody and they asked him, "Oh, what do you do?" Funeral director. 9 times out of 10, people would walk away. I wouldn't even speak with him. But that's probably an extreme example.
Right.
But when you think about, if you have this big thing around your identity and purpose being linked to the career choices that you've made, and that's stripped away, or AI gets rid of what your role is or what you're doing, it can become quite a scary world where people are not understanding their purpose.
And I think that's actually the next biggest pandemic we have.
The next biggest pandemic is not going to be a bacterial or virus based. It's going to be based on purpose. And I think if you can find a way of understanding your purpose, and whether this be through business or through doing philanthropic ventures or whatever it is, if you can find a purpose, and I think a lot of people genuinely want to set up their own businesses. I ask so many people, like, have you ever felt about starting a business? And quite often they'll say, yes, I had this passion. And you ask them, why haven't you done it? It's like, oh, I don't know. Okay. Why haven't you done it?
Yeah.
It's very small, the number of people who take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
And one of two things are either going to happen. Either entrepreneurship will become the next big thing that everyone wants to do and everyone wants to get on the bandwagon of setting up their own businesses, or people are going to be forced into entrepreneurship because the traditional jobs out there are not going to be the same, and it's going to be either adapt or find a different route. And I think there's going to be a massive spate of entrepreneurs that are going to emerge over the next 8
entrepreneurs. I like that. I don't know, Chris. I feel a partnership brewing here. Mikey G podcast experience, helping people tell about their purpose. You have the back end systems there. We're telling stories together. I mean, there's potential. I feel good about that.
Well, I can't announce it yet, but there is something exciting that I'm working on, which is separate to the business, but I think you will absolutely love. And we probably could have a whole conversation or session.
We'll have a whole conversation offline.
Yeah.
And I think that's my next question, and then we can start getting towards the winding down. I mean, listen, man, we're hour and 40 minutes in, and this has been an incredible conversation. I know we could go for more and more hours, but we both are very busy, and I gotta start winding it down. But the one question is, I'm interested in, because you said 3 pillars, which are the networking, right? Was one of them. What were the other 2?
Networking, technology, and knowledge.
Yes. So the networking, technology, and knowledge. What is your product actually formulating? Is it a platform that you're having access? Because those are similar, but can also be very separate. So what is it? I'm just trying to visualize what your offer looks like.
Yes. So Datumra OS, the V1 that has been semi-launched through our waiting list and founding members, has 5 component parts to it. Mm-hmm. So I should have brought my product list up, so I'll try and do this from memory. Cool. We have got Orbit, which is the relationship manager. So you can connect it to your inbox, and what it will do is it will triage all of your active relationships and conversations, and it will look at something called Foundation, which will have your business plans, and a lot of this can be automated through the platform. So if you've got an idea or you've got your business in motion, it can put together all your playbooks, all your blueprints, what your business is focusing on, where your attention should be. So Orbit can talk to Foundation and find out who are the people that are most important right now for you to be speaking with. If you are looking for an investor raise, your top of your inbox will be all your investors. If you are looking at more clients, it will surface all of your most critical clients in order of importance of who you are potentially letting slip through the net. The third piece is focus. Focus is how you pan out your attention. So you can set it up, and it does a similar thing. It looks at everything that's on your to-do list and also does a similar thing to what Orbit does, but for your tasks. So you've got Orbit that sorts out the relationships. You've got Focus that sorts out your to-do list. And if there's something really important, you can enable a Pomodoro timer that stops all your distractions for 20, 25 minutes. You can focus on that, and then you can get it done, shipped out, and done. It could also be connecting. So if there is something that's really urgent that comes up, you can optionally have it where it will only disturb you if this is a business critical, the most important thing ever. So it kind of tries to protect your calendar, protect your time.
Nice.
The fourth piece is something called Catalyst. So Catalyst is designed to distill knowledge about things that founders typically only discover when they have to do it. So if you've never hired somebody in your life and you're bringing on your first either technical hire, you can go onto a Catalyst and it will build out a blueprint of how you should be thinking about the interview process, what you should be looking for, like the legal playbooks that you need to put together, what they need to sign. And it'll just basically give you that dummy's guide of this is the first time you're running it. This is how you can do it. And then if you want to take that process, you can edit it and then you can automate it to something that can work in the background. And you can do the same with like a marketing campaign, for example. If you've never done a social media marketing campaign, it can guide you through that same process of how do you put a playbook together? Do you understand your niche audience? Do you know the people that you're actually creating your content pillars around? So it's designed to give you the minimum you need to just get you started and to help you build some automations. And then the final piece is something that I've had a lot of fun putting together, but it's a security system called Breakwater. So where I live in the UK, we are not too far from a place called Wales, and there is a place called Breakwater. I've kind of named it after that. But the idea of Breakwater is whenever you are using AI or using technologies, there is a risk that too much data goes out there. So if you're using an AI agent and you've got sensitive information, you've got to be very careful what information you're putting out there, because if there is a breach in an agentic AI workflow, potentially you've just leaked loads of customer data and you are going to get some very bad legal implications put against you. So what Breakwater does is it treats AI and automation systems as a privileged user and restricts anything that's private and confidential directly into the Datumra system and never lets our AI system actually see that data. So there's the layer one protection where none of the information can be used to build or train any models, including our own. And then there's a second layer that protects the data. So only the minimum of what is needed can actually be seen by any of the AI or LLMs. So those are the 5 component parts. And that's how we've built it out. So it's a mix of technology and the knowledge. And on the third piece even, I don't know where pious came from, but on the third piece, the networking side, we actually have started, and I'll only briefly mention this, otherwise we'll go into so much time, and I know you've got places to be as well. So the kind of the final piece was on the network side. So we made a promise when we first started that we would put 10% of our profits back into AI for good or grants or supporting founders or entrepreneurship. Beautiful. So the first thing that we created was a venture competition called VC26. And as part of VC26, what we're trying to do is give people completely free of charge more access to confidence building events like pitch rooms where they can pitch and practice and get the right connections and get the right feedback. We've got lots of different workshops and things that are all fully funded by the paid part of Datumra. But I think the big thing from it is it's actually connecting people together. It's connecting founders with other founders. It's connecting founders with investors. So what used to be, if you don't know someone, it'd be quite tricky to get a warm introduction. VC26 has actually opened up a lot of doors. I can't say too much at the moment, but there's other things we're working on in the background that are going to make it very exciting when it comes to the networking side of the platform.
Beautiful. What is the next? So I've got always one question I ask everybody at the end, but before that, next 3 to 6 months, what excites you? Is there anything that you can share?
So the next 3 months. Next month, I'm speaking at the UK's biggest, it's essentially Glastonbury for business. I'm speaking at Ideas Fest next month. We've got quite a few exciting things happening around the event. We have also got a few surprises coming up in October. So I think it's October the 8th, which is the 1-year anniversary of Datumra. So we've got a very special event that is happening, and we will be announcing that closer to the time, but it's linked in with something that we're going to be releasing into the mainstream. So you've heard it here first.
I heard it here
September and
first.
October are going to be very busy months for us.
Yeah, that's the big alpha right now. I love it, man. I mean, this has been, can't wait to give my recap. But before we get there, final question I ask everybody that comes on the show. If someone were to ask you what it was like to be on the Mikey G podcast experience, what would you say?
Awesome.
Just awesome.
I would actually say, you never know what you're going to expect when you come into something like this. And I think the one thing that I didn't expect was the stories in chapter 1 that you got from me. And I think there's a lot that has been quite self-reflective for me, as well as the people who are listening. So it's been an experience.
It's an experience. That's why I call it an experience, right? Because I think I think the thing that excites me is your response is what I'm going for, right? So I've done my job if you feel that way. But then too, like when we think about reflection and stuff, everybody always thinks like, oh, it's a traumatic thing and I got to peel back all the layers of the onions. But like we did a reflective exercise today, and it didn't have to be all of the scary things people think about. We did it in a really interesting way to shed light on the positive parts of things. And I think the way that we approach it in that warm, authentic, genuine way helps to get you to think about this in a positive way, not a negative way. Yeah. And that's also, I think, something that we miss now. I just made this insight. But like literally real time right now, we're on like interview 245. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I mean, people have described it as therapeutic and it's got a therapy session. But I think when we think therapy and all of these different things, it's always like, tell me about all the horrible things that have happened in your life and we'll start from there. What the Mikey G podcast experience does is tell me why you're a beautiful human being. Because everybody is, right? And you are as well. And things that the tripod, I mean, that hit me immediately. Just talking about the tripod. And then you follow up like a rough time with like a beautiful donkey poem. I love, I could tell you have so many interesting creative thoughts and ideas because of the way that you were brought up though. The book being handed to you by your grandma, how you talk about the influences of having a comfortable home and how much love and all of those things matter, because I totally agree with it. You got out of me my mom's mantra, if you put your mind to it, buckle down, do it. The invisible, how you was really cool to see in the beginning. And this happens a lot, right? Like, we started off and I was like, hey, tell me about the childhood. And you wanted to immediately jump to 2012, right? But then I pulled you back. And then when I pulled you back, we got some of the media stuff at the podcast, which then helped what was cool to see is that because I brought you back, you started percolating these invisible threads and you started making these connections. And that was, I think, the most beautiful part of the podcast for me, is to start pulling these threads through and telling all of these stories. Because we could have gone down the typical route of like, well, you worked for a rocket ship of an AI startup. Let's just talk about that and only that. We talked about the more important things. And you did, and this is not lost on me. That took courage. That took strength as well, just to be open, be a little vulnerable like that. That absolutely is not lost on me. And that's actually, out of everything, I deeply appreciate more. I know you shared some things here that you typically wouldn't share on a podcast because of the nature of our conversation. And that means the world to me. And I know for sure, not one, multiple lives will be changed by listening to this conversation. That's how meaningful it was to me. And I know it will be meaningful to a lot of other people. And that's it, man. With that being said, the Mikey G podcast experience is coming to a close. I will sign us off. Chris and Mikey G are out, and we thank you all.